Are you an accounting or tax professional who wants to stay ahead without spending a dime? Join thousands who trust insightful accountant and tax practice news to keep them informed and empowered. Get expert updates on QuickBooks, Xero, tax planning strategies, and workflow tips delivered straight to your inbox. Whether you're a solo bookkeeper, firm leader, or tax advisor, these newsletters are your shortcut to what's next in the profession. They're free, practical, and built for people like you. Visit insightfulaccountant.com and hit subscribe to start your smarter workflow today for free.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Accounting Insiders Podcast. My name is Gary DeHart. I'm the host of the Accounting Insiders Podcast, publisher of Insightful Accountant. It is November the 12th, 2025. I always like to put the date out there because what we say today is true. And 2 months from now, it may not be. So if anything changes between now and then, that's not on us. So my guest today is Isaac Smith. Isaac is the co-founder of Team Up. Team Up is helping accountants hire talent in the Philippines. So Isaac, thank you so much for taking some time to have a discussion.
Gary, thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Absolutely. And I was on your LinkedIn profile before we started recording and noticed that you're just getting back from the Philippines.
Yes.
How long have you been back?
Well, I got back a week and a half ago. No, yeah, a week and a half ago. I had several things that I did right in a row, learned a lesson. There's a lot of recovery time for that. But yeah, highly recommend people to go out to the Philippines if they have people there. Just a wonderful place and amazing people.
Yeah, I have not been there. It's not really ever been on my list of places to go, but as we're going to discuss, we currently have 3 people in the Philippines who do amazing work for us, and it would be great to be able to go and see them in their homes, in their home environment, in their home country. So tell me just a little bit about your background, kind of what were you doing prior to this that got you to doing what you're doing?
Yeah. So, like you said, we help firms hire accounting staff in the Philippines. And that's because I had a bookkeeping firm, and that's what I did. So it was just my partner and me here in Portland, Oregon, and everybody else we hired in the Philippines. So we didn't have any US staff at all. That's because I had done that in previous businesses, and it was just an obvious move to me. And
Yeah.
so we built a bookkeeping team of about 12 to 14 people, depending on how you count part-time and full-time. And then, as you might imagine, you start talking with accountants and they ask, hey, what are you doing? That's different. Tell me more. And how does that work? And then eventually, wow, can you help us do that too? So we said, sure, why not? That sounds like fun. And turns out it was fun. A lot more fun than bookkeeping for me. And
Yeah.
and so 2.5 years ago, I thought, oh my gosh, I need to really focus on this. So I started Team Up with my partner, Meryl, a couple years ago.
Yeah. And so you had already hired people like in the bookkeeping firm, you had already hired people in the Philippines. Was that your first time, or did you say you had hired people in the Philippines prior to that in another
Prior
role?
to that, yeah, I've done a lot of things.
Okay.
I used to run e-commerce businesses. I started e-commerce businesses and eventually sold one. And so I was in the very beginning days of that, I didn't have any money. And so like you think, okay, well, how can I get work done? And so you start
Right.
by finding freelancers online who can help you with things here and there. And I just sort of learned over time how that works and became comfortable and then worked with people in many countries. And over time, gravitated more and more to the Philippines. And by the time it was, so eventually I sold an e-commerce business. I hated my accountants. And so it prompted me to want to serve people like me in a better way. So I partnered with somebody who had the accounting knowledge that I lacked. And together, we built a bookkeeping firm and took my previous experience and hired everybody in the Philippines the whole bookkeeping team.
Okay. And then, so you mentioned going to the Philippines. So when you were in that role, did you take trips to the Philippines then?
So I've been working with people there for over 10 years now, and I only recently, in the last 4 years, started going there. As we started to build a more established team, I wanted to start meeting with them. So the first time I went was 2022, after,
Okay.
COVID. COVID was a difficult time to travel. And so, yeah, then that's when I met with our bookkeeping team, for the first time. Highly recommend.
Gotcha. Yeah. Now, do you have them all in the same, are they all in the same city or are you across, again, until I started working with people in the Philippines, they didn't really have a good concept of what the Philippines was like. So it's an island country, right? And so they're spread out over, it's thousands of miles, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. I don't remember the number of islands there are, but it's thousands of islands. But there are three main islands, I think, at least where the population centers are. And my approach was always, well, if we're gonna be remote, let's just hire the best people wherever they are. And so we never focused on any cities or locations. We just run a process that is that's open to anybody in the country who is qualified and wants to apply. And so we've had people kind of in the bookkeeping firm, when you have, more than 10 people, they're going to end up being scattered kind of across the country. And so that's what it was. And so we flew people into a central place where we could meet, when we did that.
gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. So as I mentioned, already, and we talked about it before we started recording, we have, three people who we work with or who work with us in the Philippines, and we view them as, I mean, they're part of our team,
Hmm.
100%. They're in our systems. They are, in our meetings. They are, responsible for areas of our business, and I I don't know why we didn't do this sooner. And other than, it still costs money, right? And so we did have to be able to, be in a position to be able to bring them on. But it has certainly helped us, my business partner and I, get a lot more done, and get a lot more done efficiently and effectively. It really helped us kind of unload some of the things that either we don't want to do, shouldn't be doing, and those are two different things.
Hmm.
And in many cases, really not very well qualified to do. And I put social media under that one because it's probably all three. Something I'm not qualified to do, something I don't really want to do, and something I shouldn't be doing. Um, and so, but we have found, again, we have three working with us currently. We had another person, a fourth, but in all four cases, the work ethic super high, their desire to work super high, their English, as we mentioned before, English. We had one who was, you would have thought she grew up down the street. The three who are with us now, their English is good and improving. Um, as you're looking for and sourcing people in the Philippines, what does that look like? I mean, how do you, if you have a firm here in the U.S., they're going to want somebody, I would imagine, with pretty good English skills.
Hmm.
How do you sort through that? I mean, are we making phone calls or Zoom calls?
Yeah, so maybe to back up and set some context for just a second, the
Yeah.
way I see, if we want to use the words outsourcing or offshoring, or um, I, 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 I don't think we need to use those types of terms. I think what the way that firm owners and us business owners should be thinking is, let's build the best team possible.
Mhm.
And then who cares where people are, right? And so, in the early days, you used to think of like outsourcing or offshoring or whatever as let's get the grunt work out, the menial tasks, the admin stuff, the low level stuff. Well, if you really think about it, the world we live in today, you and I are talking, we're across the country. We're using
Yeah.
Zoom. If we wanted to work together, we could, right? No big deal. We have the tools to do that. And so the way that we think about our team, I'm in Oregon, you're in Georgia, right? Somebody else could be in the Philippines. You can hire a professional, right? You can hire, there's a whole country of highly educated people with a lot of experience and great attitudes. So we don't need to think of them as different from us or their capabilities as different from ours. They're not different. And so to me, that's a very exciting world. Um, and so the way we can work together is really exactly the same as you and I might being across the country. Sure, there's some more time zones between us. But I'm sorry. What was the actual question that I was answering?
Yeah. Well, you said let's kind of back up, and so yeah, my original question was around screening for
Oh, right, English.
English skills, and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So, of course, not everybody in the country speaks English well, but many hundreds of thousands, many millions do. And so hiring is a process of filtering for many things. And one of those things you can filter for is English ability. So for firms, you can just say we need somebody who is fluent in English, and you'll get somebody who is
right,
fluent in English, whether you want to run that process or have somebody else like my company do it. Um, pretty simple. And so then when you have, you know, I would say most people that we work with do have an accent, right? But it's not like it's an issue. People in this country have accents. So it's yeah, you can get somebody who can have that client communication if that's what you want.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so I don't think I've asked this, but it's one of my questions, and that's why the Philippines? How'd you get drawn to the Philippines originally?
Yeah. So yeah, the Philippines is one of many countries that people are now sourcing from. India is the other one that we hear a lot about. I've worked with people in India. I've worked with people in Eastern Europe. I've worked with people in Egypt and many other countries. And I would say there are great people everywhere in the world.
Sure.
Why now I've gravitated towards the Philippines is because it's so easy. Because there's a there's just a large talent pool. There's a critical mass there, and it's easy to access. They're not scattered across different platforms, and they're not hard to find. There's just a lot of people there who have a lot of experience already working with U.S. firms, and so that's one reason. The English
Okay.
capability, their English comprehension, right? We already talked about that. The fluency is very high in
Yeah.
the Philippines compared to other countries. They're just wonderful people. I get along with them well. We have a lot of similar cultural, the cross ties. It just makes it really easy to work with them. So that's why.
Right. Okay. What about their technical skills, like coming into the job force? And um again, we've had great experience with it, but is it pretty common that as people in the Philippines are getting into working ages, are they technical skills comparable to what you might find here in the US?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I try to tell people is if you have expectations for somebody that you would hire remotely in the US, you should have those same expectations for somebody in the Philippines. It shouldn't be different. Of course, like you can't do a blanket expectation and expect everybody to be like that, just like people in the US will surprise you. So
Yeah.
like individuals are all going to be different no matter what country, but your expectations can remain roughly the same.
Okay, great. So let's talk about, we're going to pull the old Clint Eastwood movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly of hiring. Well, we could probably just stop it at that, right? Of hiring, because like you just said, it's really doesn't matter. You're hiring for the individual for a job, right? And whether they're sitting in South Florida, you know, Northern Alabama or Eastern Oregon, doesn't really matter, or the Philippines. It doesn't matter as long as they're qualified and willing and able to do the job. But
Hmm.
in hiring in the Philippines, uh, what are the when I say the good, bad, the ugly, I'm looking at like the pitfalls. What are the top problems or key considerations that you see or that an employer needs to keep in mind as they are hiring? And since you are focused in the Philippines, I do want to talk about that specifically if I'm hiring in the Philippines.
Yeah. So and that's a good frame, and it's good to be thinking about, what are the challenges, because there are, right? And you'll hear your listeners, I'm sure, have heard lots of stories about when it's gone wrong, because it can go wrong, right?
Sure.
Um, and so of course, being in the position that I'm in, I hear lots of these stories. And so, but when we start to look into them, um, you can usually trace back to the point where, oh, maybe this is where it went wrong. And you can keep going, and of course, I have a perspective, right? And not everybody's going to share my perspective. But where I see it all originating is very two mindset things. One, here at the top two, if you want to do internet language, right? The top two mistakes firms make. Uh, Number one is very simple. It's thinking about the the people that you want to bring on as those people over there. Simple as that, right? If you see a difference between us and them, if you use words like my offshore team rather than my team, that is going to shift the way that you talk about them, the way that you talk to them,
Yeah.
the way that you interact with them, and the way that you set things up. And that can cascade down into many things. So, like, for example, um, one of the topics that we might get to on this call is working with, an intermediary company, whatever we wanted to call these outsourcing companies, right? Well, if you think you need an intermediary company, things are going to behave differently, right? And so that's what I mean. A lot of times, there are these forking branches in your decision tree, and the more you can think of the firms that I see that have, from my perspective, the most success, see themselves as one team. We're all the same. I'll
Yeah.
pause there.
Yeah. Do you find the ones that seem to have the most success, is there a team in the Philippines working US hours, or are they working Philippine hours, or
Mm.
do they split that? How does that work?
Yeah, so there are no right answers to any of these questions. They're
Yeah.
just options. But generally, what we see working really well is for the firm in the US to choose a couple of hours that you have overlapping. Um, so I'm on Pacific time. My afternoon is their morning. Works great. And so people can start uh, logging in 3 or 4 p.m. my time. I have a couple of hours with them, and off I go to dinner. For you on the East Coast, there is no business hour overlap, as you know. So what we usually see working well is to choose your morning hours. So if we take during daylight savings time, so this gets a little confusing every 6 months because
Right. Yeah.
we
Just went
change
through
our
that.
time, they don't change their time.
Yeah.
And so, but during summer, it's a 12-hour time difference, which makes the math easy. You just flip AM and PM. So
Right.
what we see working very well is to choose your, let's just say like 8 to 11 AM for you, which is 8 to 11 PM for them. So I think, the thought process is, yeah, I don't mind doing a couple hours after the kids go to bed, if I can then choose the rest of my hours. Speaking as the person in the Philippines,
Yeah.
that works really well.
Yeah. Yeah, we have one right now who splits. He works half his time during our hours and then half his time outside of that. The other two currently, one of them, unfortunately, his role is I was telling you about, he really runs our webinars, so he's
Mm,
got to be here for
yeah.
us during our times.
Yep.
It's just kind of stuck with it. The social media one, not as time bound, but I imagine I wouldn't be surprised if her schedule changes a little bit. But we're super flexible. We're
Mm,
not, we try to be, and if they prefer to work in alternate hours, we're open to that because, especially like social media, it doesn't matter when that work gets done. You don't have to be here during my time. I do want you here some of my time so we can have
mhm.
discussions, and so it's not just some black hole that I'm sending, chats to, right? Or a task list. Like you have said, they're part of our team,
Yeah.
and we want them to feel like they're part of our team. 100%.
Right.
So, what are some things like just the like either pitfalls or considerations that let's stick with pitfalls. That'll be the bad side of it that you've seen take place just in your time working there.
Cool. Yeah, I want to answer that, but I also know that we left an open loop for the listener. I said the top
Okay.
two things, and I
Great.
only told you one.
Oh, all right.
The other one's
All
much
right.
quicker. Is the second big mistake firms make is just making it more complicated than it needs to be. It's
Mm,
actually all very quite simple. Of course, there are some details. They're going to want to know about compliance, and we can talk about compliance. But it's a detail. It's not a driver of the whole system. And so, yeah, just keeping things simple is a recipe for success. To your question,
Yeah, yeah, and then
yeah,
so just kind of the bad or it could be bad or pitfalls. Kind of what are some things that I've got to have in mind as let's say I've never hired somebody outside of the country. What are some of the couple of things that I really need to be mindful of? You kind of touched on them, but um, beyond those
yeah.
mindsets.
Well, so I have seen challenges come up, of course. And, one of those challenges is, or one of the pitfalls that I've seen is waiting until you're too busy to bring somebody on. And then you don't have the capacity to onboard somebody well, give them a good start, and you just throw them into a fire. I had one
Right.
guy tell me, he said, my hair is on fire. Accountants, right? They have too much work. And so this poor guy, like I really felt for him. And so then he hired somebody and then he said, this just isn't working. And I'm like, well, what has been your process? And he said, well, I haven't even talked to her. I'm like, yeah, okay.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. You're gonna have to engage.
I mean, I feel for him. Um, but yeah, you have to know that you're just like hiring somebody anywhere else. You've got to be able to give them a good start.
Right. And if you can't do the hand holding yourself or like one on one like this, you've got to have resources, whether it be, your FAQ somewhere or your we don't have one, but your human resources booklet, right? That tells them here's the process. But that's going to be true for anybody, right? I
Yeah,
mean, I can't hire my next door neighbor and expect them to know what I do if I don't tell them, right? Or expect them to know what to do if I don't tell them what to do. They have
yeah,
to have guidance
yeah.
wherever you are and whoever you are. Anything else that you've seen um, that's kind of a, again, pitfall or what you really need to make sure is pointed out on the front end, what people are
Yeah,
aware of?
a couple of things come to mind, and I'm realizing, usually when I talk about these things, I'll say, and did you notice that, that applies to anybody you hire anywhere. Um, so like, but I did think of some things that apply specifically to the Philippines, but you brought up process, and I think that's important to mention. Yeah, it is good to have process documented, systems in place. Um, but at the same time, I think that a lot of people have received a message from the internet that says if you're going to hire people outsource people or whatever, that's a clue, right? They said outsource people. If you're going to hire, they say, you have to make sure that all of your processes are thoroughly documented, your SOPs are in place, people can follow step-by-step directions. I just don't believe that's true. Um, that's good to have. But if you're hiring intelligent people, you can work with them, and yeah, you should probably have some systems in place, but you don't need, I think a lot of people go, well, I don't have my processes, thoroughly documented so that I can't make this hire. So I'm stuck. And you end up like the guy I just described, his hair's on fire because you were too, you thought you couldn't move forward when really you could have.
Mhm. Yeah, we actually we have some documentation in place. I would say it's probably not super current. And but I have our team in the Philippines doing the documentation now. Like,
Yeah.
you guys, you're doing it.
Yeah.
So just because I wrote it out doesn't mean it's right or
Right.
the best way, or
Yeah.
what was correct a year and a half ago probably isn't correct
Hmm.
now. I mean, we've got a whole other, with AI, we've got a whole other resource, right, that we can pull on that needs to be added in or amended in that process document. But again, that's regardless of where you sit. And so now what about, have you seen anything that is a better fit to, place in the Philippines versus the US, or again, is it job agnostic, if you will?
Yeah, there is a way that I think about this, and I think, like you said, like your one guy has to be available for webinars. So
Yeah.
I think it's more along the lines of time expectations, and so yeah, you can hire people who want to work at night, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, if
Yeah.
they want to do that. But of course, that will limit your access to the talent pool. And so some of the conversations I have with firm owners is, okay, well, how can I, you know, do I want them to have client contact or not? Especially if they're not going to be available, full business hours. Or so then we can have a conversation of, well, maybe you should keep some client communication inside the US time zones, because maybe you're not going to be able to find that more senior level person who wants to work through the night, right? Because, we're
Mhm.
all getting older. You're like, yeah, I did
Right.
that when I was younger. I don't need to do
Yeah.
that anymore. So that actually does present a little bit of a challenge to find people who are more senior who can have those more high level discussions with your clients. And so that's a bit of a strategy session on how do you, as the firm owner, want to arrange this. You can set expectations with your clients that communications happens this way in these hours via, whether it's email or whatever. And if you want a call with somebody, maybe it'll be in those hours. Or
Mhm.
maybe you're like, I don't want my clients to have to deal with that at all. I want somebody in the US to be available all the time, and they can talk. So like there's no right or wrong answers here, but just a lot of options and some things that you
Yeah.
can think through.
Yeah. Okay. It really depends on what the role is and what the need is for the firm.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's do this. Let's wrap up with, maybe, since you've been doing this for several years now, kind of we could call it a checklist, or you're going back to the internet's, top five, maybe the top five, if that's the right number, keys to success in, again, we're not using the term offshoring or outsourcing, but key to success in bringing
Yeah.
on talent from the Philippines.
Yeah. Hiring offshore, right? So I already gave the top two, right? One is think of your team as one whole, you know. Two is don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. And if you would like, we can talk about compliance stuff, because I know that's going to be a question for the listeners. And then let's see, 3, 4, 5. Really, yeah, it all comes down to leadership and management, right? How do you lead your team? How do you select the people who are going to be right for your team? You know, because not every, oh, this is a big one. Okay, here we go. Not everybody who's qualified is going to be right for you, for your firm, right? That's a lesson that I learned the hard way, right? You hire somebody who has got all the right skills, and then, oh, this just isn't working because it's just not a, it's not a personality, character, values fit, right? Culture fit. So we've all heard you should hire for attitude. Well, that's true.
Right.
For, well, you know, I don't actually have off the top of my head, 4 and 5, but
Yeah. Sure.
I did kind of tease, like, there are some cultural challenges. Should we talk about those? Like,
Sure.
this is
Yeah,
where
absolutely.
this is where it has gone wrong for me, and I
Okay.
have heard these stories. Is there is actually there are cultural differences. Like I said at the beginning, they are pretty similar to us, but it is a different country, and they do have a different culture. And if you're not aware, things can go wrong. So it comes down to a few things. One is community versus individual, right? Each culture is at a different place on that continuum. Another is direct versus indirect communication. Another is, yeah, like saving face, right? And so here, let me present a problem that a lot of people, including me, have experienced, and maybe the listener can relate to, or maybe you can relate to. Let's say
Right.
you have a new task or a new project or something, and you have a call with your teammate in the Philippines to go over it. And you say, hey, whatever your name, right? Like, hey, I've got this new thing I want you to do. Here's the objective. I think you should probably do this and this and this, but you figure it out or whatever. You have that conversation that we would normally have, right? And then at the end of the call, you say, okay, got it? Or what questions do you have? No questions. Like, okay, you got it? I can see a little smile on your face, right?
Yeah.
So then you get, okay, great. And you leave that call feeling very confident, like, yes, okay, we're going to move forward. This is going to be taken care of. Oh, and you'll say, I'll check in with you on Tuesday or whatever. And so Tuesday comes around, you have a call like, okay, great. Tell me about how it's gone. And they are like, just kind of like look into the camera and like, and you go like, well, what did you do? Do you have any questions? What did you do? And oh, I didn't start. Or I did step 1 and 2 that was just kind of preparation, but I didn't actually start the meat of it. And you're like, whoa, what happened here? Huh? Why not? And you go, and they'll say like, well, I didn't understand. And you're like, whoa, I asked you if you understood. You told me yes. And then you had all of these days that you could have asked me, but you didn't. Why not? And this is a cultural thing. And so if, the severity of that situation can, if it's bad enough, you can start to think, oh my gosh, I just can't work with these people. So I'll pause there. It looks like you've had some experience.
We have not a lot, but there have been a couple of times, and you kind of walk away going. At times, I've walked away going, "We did have that conversation, right?" And I'm not getting any younger, so it's quite possible that I totally made that conversation up in my own head.
Yeah.
But it's been and not widespread, but there have been a couple of times where like I know we talked about it. I pretty sure we even have some documentation around it,
Yeah.
and it just didn't happen.
Okay.
And
So this mystery here, let me explain why this happened.
yeah, That's awesome.
So it's those cultural things. One is direct versus indirect communication. So we are very comfortable with direct communication and direct, and that there are two facets to this. One is I'm telling you something, versus I'm telling somebody to tell you this thing. The other facet is I'm not beating around the bush. I'm telling you what I need, right? I'm not flowering it up with a bunch of language. Americans are pretty extremely direct. I have learned in recent years, though, that countries in Europe, Eastern Europe especially, or in the Netherlands, are even more direct than we are, as well as Israel. So we think we're extreme, but we're not that extreme. Filipino culture is on the other side. And so they prefer, if they have bad news or something that they're going to feel like you're not going to want to hear, is displeasing, they would much rather tell somebody else to tell you. That's just how it is. Yeah. And also they're going to want to just hint at it, right? They're not going to want to be direct. They're like, it's like, my wife knows I'm not going to pick up on these hints, you know? So it's kind of the same thing. They might, and so like, if you're asking them, okay, here's what I want to do, is that okay with you? They're not going to tell you no. They, in their culture, and this goes to the next part, which is authority. They have very strong deference to the boss, and it's their working culture is very top down, command and control sort of thing. And so it's seen as disrespectful to say no. And they would much rather nod and smile and say yes. And so like, if you're telling them to do something that they know is wrong, you the boss are the one in the wrong, they would much rather just say smile and go about their day and just not do it at all, because they know you're wrong, rather than tell you, no, you're wrong.
That's interesting.
And so then, and there's a few other things involved in there, like they don't want to be, saving face is important to them, and so they don't want to look incompetent in front of the boss, right? And so like all of this put together creates that situation that we just talked about. And so what do you do? Well, one is to recognize what did I just do in this conversation? I generalized an entire country of people, right? And I said they're all the same. They're not, right?
Right.
So you're going to have individuals who are different, and some of them, and so there are a lot of people there who are more comfortable doing it sort of our way. And so, that could be because that's their personality, or it could be because they've had a lot of experience working with people like us. And so my message is, well, so then hire them. And then you don't have the issues.
Hire the right person, right?
Yeah. And it becomes like in the US, right? Not all Americans are the same. Some of us are shy. Some of us are this way, that way. We also have many cultures here. And so then it just becomes more like that. And it's your job as a leader to create an environment, a place where people with the different personalities are able to step into their roles and speak up when they need to.
Yeah, that's great. So you had mentioned compliance, and you said we probably should touch on compliance.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
Well, so I'm here with a message that is like surprising to people to hear, right? Like you can just hire somebody, right?
Yeah.
You can just hire somebody in the Philippines. And people are like, whoa, what is that? That sounds like a great idea, but what does that mean? And then how does that work? Do I need to learn about Philippines employment law? Can they be contractors? And so the answer is yes, right? Okay, so first of all, disclaimer time. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not your lawyer. I can't speak for what's going to be right for your firm. I can just tell you what I've seen, hundreds of firms doing and what my perspective is. So yes, you can hire people as contractors if you would like to. You could also hire them as employees if you would like to. And every firm is going to have a different reason that they might do one or the other. If you choose to hire people as contractors, it's actually quite simple. It's basically what you assume it might be. They're responsible for their tax, for some of the things their government asks of them. Your responsibilities are minimal. You just pay them there are many payment platforms that can do that.
Yeah.
If you would like to hire them as employees, I'm assuming you don't have an entity in the Philippines, so you can use what's called an employer of record. And that's a company. Some people here are familiar with PEO organizations. Say you wanted to hire someone in another state, right? You might use a PEO to do that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the simple thing is there's a company in the Philippines that will employ people on your behalf, right? And you have a contract with that company. So they do the payroll, the compliance, all of that, and the benefits administration and everything. And so they just facilitate you being able to work one-on-one with somebody, and that's all. They're not trying to do management, or we haven't really talked about those outsourcing companies, but the difference here between outsourcing companies and these employer record companies is they're not trying to get involved with your work. They're not adding layers of management. They're not adding training. They're just doing the back end.
Right.
So some people, yeah, I know this can go down a really deep rabbit hole. It's probably not what we want to do on a podcast, but
Right.
I know that there are listeners who are thinking like, well, what about this and what about that? And what about the IRS regulations and, contractor versus, or state of California, right? Contractors versus employee. And that sounds more like an employee, right? Well, if that's your perspective, like I said, you can hire them as employees through the employer
Right.
record.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything in closing? I think we kind of covered all the major topics we were planning to hit on. Anything that you can think of that we've missed, or just anything you want to share in closing,
Sure.
including
Well,
how do people get in touch with you?
Sure. Well, I could tell you a little bit about our company, what we do. As it's pretty clear, we have a philosophy that you can just work with people. And so that's what we help people do. So Team Up is my company. We're just recruiters. And so we help firms hire staff in the Philippines. And if they want to do that, you know, if they hire through us, that's their relationship with that person that they've hired, not ours. So, like I said, they would pay them or the employer of record would pay them. We don't have the ability to, nor would we want to take a little slice of their pay for ourselves, which I think is fair that way. So anyway, yeah, you can feel free to reach out and learn more about what we do if you want to. You can find me on LinkedIn, search my name, or just go to our website, hireteamup.com.
Okay. And then actually one other thing, and that is the roles that you guys hire for.
Mm-hmm.
So, our audience is primarily, accounting professionals.
Yep.
Are you hiring for any and all roles? Support,
We
admin, technology?
Yeah, so we try to stay focused on what we're good at. And so we focus on accounting and finance roles. And so, that includes admin, right? So admin, your executive assistants, virtual assistants, bookkeeping, accounting, tax. You can even hire tax managers, although they're a little more difficult to find, but accounting managers, directors, you know. But yeah, that's what we focus on.
Okay. Well, very good. All right. Well, Isaac, thank you so much for your time. When's your next trip back to the Philippines?
March, and this time I'm taking my family. I can't wait.
Oh, that'll be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, very good. All right. Well, thank you again. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for sharing your in-depth knowledge on hiring in the Philippines. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
This episode of the Accounting Insiders podcast is brought to you by Insightful Accountants Be Insightful membership program. Get 9 expert-led training tracks, over 30 CPE hours a year, hands-on workshops, and year-round premium content to grow your skills and your practice. Learn more at blog.insightfulaccountant.com. Just click the Premium Member Content button.